Story time about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. Growing up, I was really awkward. My parents always used to call me the ugly duckling, but my dad told me not to worry that when I would grow up, I would become beautiful. Honestly, this really stuck to my head, and I am very beautiful now. I used to have braces, acne. My hair has always been curly, but I didn't know how to treat it back then. My mom had really straight hair, so she had no idea how to do my hair either. And this was the toughest thing for me. I would show up to school with knots in my hair because I didn't even know how to brush it. Eventually, my mom did start taking better care of my hair, which really helped. I also didn't know how to dress for my body. I wore big hoodies, big t-shirts, while the other girls in my high school dressed for their body type. I honestly just had no clue. I did get bullied, but mostly by boys. I think the girls probably just felt bad for me, so I never really had problems with other girls. A group of boys would always bother me. One of them even asked me out, pretending that he wanted to go out with me. Of course I said yes because I actually believed him. He asked me to go to the movies, and when I showed up, he wasn't there. I decided to go watch the movie anyway, but the next day in school, I couldn't hear the end of it. To my face, this guy called me stupid. A few days later, they made a list of the ugliest girls. Part 2 is story time about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my story time, I said on Instagram. That's when the boys came out with the list of the ugliest girls in high school. What they did was pass around some flyers with all the names on it, and then they had people write the #1 ugliest girl on the list. As soon as I saw my name on the list, I wanted to die. I pretended I was sick and went home. There was this one girl who actually stood up for me and the rest of the girls, and she was actually one of the prettiest girls in the entire school. She told everyone to knock it off, but nobody listened to her. Instead, the boys added her to the list as well, but there was no way that she was going to get voted #1. I would show up every day to school that week wishing that I was dead. Finally, on Friday, they came out with the winner. And of course, everyone picked me. I was completely mortified, but I actually started laughing when I saw the list. It was like the stress from the entire week had finally accumulated, and my reaction was to just laugh. While they were all hoping that I was just going to break down and cry, I started to laugh in their faces. The teacher asked me what was wrong and I showed her the list. She ran over to the principal's office and everything became way too dramatic for me. So I literally decided to run away from school. When I got home, I told my parents everything. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimers, not my story time, was sending me on Instagram. When I got home and told my parents what happened, my dad actually started to cry. He actually did feel really bad for me. They sat me down and told me that looks weren't everything. That's when my dad told me again that I would grow out of this awkward phase. Then they decided to take me shopping to the mall. I went into this really cute clothing store that I had always wanted to go to but never had the courage to, and they actually bought me a full wardrobe. After that, that's when my mom took me to a salon and they actually did my hair. They gave me a whole hair care routine, which I had never even heard of before, and I even went and got some Noxzema, which actually the Noxzema really worked for my acne. So when I got back to school, I felt like a different person, but not really because I was still me. The principal had gone out of her way to make all the boys pay, but really they only got suspension and didn't go to school for a week. The rest of high school was actually not that bad. I did look a lot better. 5 years later, I'm absolutely gorgeous. And guess what? One of the boys who bullied me actually slipped into my DMs last week. What should I say?
Story time about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So we're gonna call my best friend Joey. Joey and I had been best friends since we were 4 years old, and my family was really close with his and vice versa. And she had always been really nice to him, of course, because he was a family friend and he was my best friend. Well, one day I thought that she liked him a little bit more than she liked me. And she would always ask the weirdest questions. Like, oh, is Joey single? Or what's Joey's sexuality? Like, sis had a whole ass husband. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it because I just thought that she really wanted him and I to date. But when he turned 15, things started getting a little bit weirder. Like, sometimes he would go over my house right after school, even when I wasn't there, to hang out with my mother. And usually the only time he was at the house was whenever him and I were hanging out. Well, the one day I walked in and they were both sitting on the couch talking. And when they both saw me, they acted like nothing was wrong with it, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So like I said, the one day I come home after school and they're both sitting on the couch already talking. And they look at me and say hi as if nothing was wrong with the situation. And then after that, Joey started mentioning how my mom was so hot. And I was like, yeah, no, she's pretty, but that's it. Well, the one day my mom left for work earlier than she usually does. So I messaged my dad and asked him if he wanted to hang out. So of course he said yes, and 5 hours later I came home and I go upstairs. And I'm just like hearing things from my mother's bedroom. So I go up and I open the door. And because I don't want this video to get taken down, you guys probably can guess what I saw. So I ran out of the room, ran downstairs. I start panicking. And Joey came and hugged me and said, I'm sorry, me and your mom just love each other. So I told them both they were absolutely disgusting. So then my mom starts crying and begging me to forgive her. And now I live with my dad. Story time about why you should never, ever, ever do drugs. So a little background information. In my town, on the 15th of June this year, 2 girls got kidnapped in my hometown. So I kind of knew these two girls. I mean, they went to my school, but that was really it. Because low-key, I didn't want to be friends with them, and I kind of hated them. They were in 7th grade, I was in 8th grade, so they were probably like a year younger than me. Anyway, so it was a Wednesday, and the last time they had been seen was at 8 p.m. with a 30-year-old man. They were supposedly doing drugs outside of a McDonald's. Well, I guess this man saw that they had been doing drugs, and he wanted some. Before that, I guess he kind of eased into the question because he was like talking to them, getting to know them, and I guess he thought he had a really good shot at getting some drugs. But when he asked, they said no. So then he asked a few more times and they finally gave them to him, but whenever they got closer, he grabbed both of them, put him in his van, and drove off. And he hid them in his house. Like for part 2. Part 2 of why you should never ever ever do drugs. So like I said, he asked for them again, and finally the girls decided to give him some. But when they got closer, he grabbed both of them and shoved them in his van, drove off. Well, he ended up driving to his house and decided to hide them there. Well, one of the girls' aunts posted something on Facebook saying that both of them were missing, and soon the news made an article that literally said, "Drug addict and her friend gets kidnapped." They went missing for like 6 days, and on the 22nd of June, they were found, but now they won't stop bragging about how fun it was to get kidnapped. And that is why, still to this day, I absolutely despise these girls. Storytime about how he cheated on his baby mama with me. So a little background information. There was this boy, and we're going to call him John. John and I knew each other through one of our mutual friends. Well, 24/7, John would post sad quotes on his Snapchat story because him and his girlfriend had just broken up. So I decided that I was going to be Captain Save-A-Ho and be there for him, telling him it was okay and that everything happens for a reason. Well, eventually, John had developed a huge crush on me. Like, he would flirt with me 24/7, sending me all these cute emojis. And of course, my dumbass fell for it. So after talking for a little bit, him and I started dating. Well, the one day I was on Snapchat going through his story, and he was posting a bunch of funny memes on his story, and I was just laughing until I got to the last thing that he posted on his story. It was this picture of a baby girl saying, "I can't wait to meet you from Dada." So with my crazy ass, I jumped on the phone and started cussing him out. And then he goes, "What are you talking about? That's my little sister." Like for part 2. Part 2 about how he cheated on his baby mama with me. So like I said, when I confronted him about it, he said that it was a picture of his baby sister. Always with the Alabama shit, for what reason, I don't know. But he calls me the next day and he starts apologizing about everything. And then he decides to make a new Snapchat account and starts talking to me on there, thinking that I was just gonna block his other account. He posts a picture of his baby mama. So at this point, my Virgo self and I were done with the bullshit. By the way, he's a Gemini, so if that doesn't explain it, I don't know what will. So I start dating my new man, and I commented on all of his posts. I guess I'm not surprised she's not the only bitch you're fucking with. And if you try lying, I'm going to spill the tea. Like, I just think that it's really funny how females just think that their men are so loyal, even when you literally expose their man with every piece of evidence. Well, the girl who sent this in has a special message for all of us. I promise you that men ain't shit. Storytime about how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So a little background information. I was 16, and I was a sophomore in high school at the time. Well, we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. And whenever Alex and I first started dating, I would literally brag to all my friends about how nice he was, about how he treated me so good. Well, fast forward a few months, him and I were still dating. And originally, my sister scared him. But eventually, he had been around long enough to the point where they were super cool. Well, after that, I started realizing some off things. For example, the one night he was texting me, and all of a sudden he just stopped responding. And I knew that he didn't fall asleep because he was still texting my sister. Well, that should have been the first red flag, but as we know, I am blind to seeing red flags. Anyways, I didn't want to seem jealous of my sister, so I just decided to play it cool and act normal. But him, on the other hand, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So like I said, I decided to act normal and not be jealous. But him, on the other hand, he started finding reasons for him not to like me, and he was ignoring me. Like, he was just being very standoffish. So the one day, my sister decides to leave her phone open on the couch when she goes to the bathroom, and I had this fantastic idea to go through her phone. Rightfully so, like, sis, don't be texting my man more than me. That's weird. Well, when I looked, there was nothing. He was just being super nice to her. And with me, on the other hand, his texts were super dry. By the way, my sister and I are twins. But she starts laughing at her phone and I'm like, what did he say? And they were just typing random letters to each other. She has a better sense of humor than that, so I knew something was off whenever she was laughing at it. And then she says, I have something to tell you, but you have to promise me you won't get mad. And then she tells me that he said that he likes her. Well, after being mad at her for a while, I realized it was his fault. Story time about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on an all-girls trip. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 around the time, and it was the summer of my freshman year. So within the last few weeks of my 8th grade year, one of the more popular boys asked me out, and we're gonna call him Carson. I wasn't like super popular at the school, but I was like a medium maybe. But I was raised in a super strict household, where the only phone that I pretty much had was one that was able to call 911 and my parents. And I especially was not allowed to be talking to boys. So Carson had the great idea of giving me his old phone, and throughout the summer, I would text him on there. Well, I started realizing him getting really toxic. Anytime that he would see my Snapchat location change, he would be like, where are you going? Why didn't you tell me you were going here? So I started distancing myself a little bit from him. Also because our relationship was just moving way too fast. Within the first month of us dating, he was talking about wanting to marry me. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners, so I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, we're done. So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, I miss you, please come back to me, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, we're done. And then at 1 a.m, he's like, I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone. So of course I didn't accept his apology and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag. Story time about the worst day of my life. So a little background information. I was 16 at the time, and I was either in 8th grade or 9th grade, but I really don't remember. And I had this boyfriend who we are going to call Cameron. We had been dating for 3 years, but before him and I got together, we were best friends. Well, I also was in a friend group with myself, Amber, and this girl named Sky. Now, I wouldn't really call Sky a pick-me girl. She was more of a jealous best friend. For example, the one day we went shopping for dresses, and I picked this one out that I really liked and that looked super good on me. Amber was like, OMG, you look so beautiful. And then Sky, she was like, that dress is ugly and it makes you look fat. Well, after that, I told her I didn't care what she said and that I was going to get the dress anyways. Well, she didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to listen to her, so she didn't talk to me for 2 whole weeks. And then after, she texted me saying that she forgives me, even though I didn't apologize, but okay. Well then, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Bad idea, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst day of my life. So like I said, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Well, after that, Cameron started acting really weird. Like him and I, we would literally hang out with each other 24/7. And now he was always too busy for me and we would only talk at school. And because I was in all the smart classes and stuff, I would go over to his house to tutor him. Because, you know, I was like the one who was winning every single fucking award for being smart. Well, I came over on the day that I would usually tutor him. And when I went over there, his mom was like, oh, he's busy. He's out with his friends. So then I went home and I got bored and I opened Instagram. Well, I see that he's at a party with Sky and they didn't even invite me. So I asked him about it and he said, oh, it was her and her boyfriend's party. So I was like, that wasn't really an excuse for why you didn't invite me. So he apologized and I forgave him. Well, 5 weeks later, I found out that him and her did the nasty and she got pregnant. And then there was a rumor going around that they made out in the bathroom. So I blocked both of them and never saw them again. Story time of why it's never good to be in a best friend group of 3. So a little background information. I was in 4th grade and I was 9 years old, about to turn 10. Now I know you're thinking that's really young. Well sis, I was just smart enough to see the red flags early on, unlike half of you who probably didn't see them. Anyway, so I had 2 friends, we're gonna call the one Becky and the one Mia. Now let me tell you a little bit about Becky. Becky was kind of a bitch. Now anytime that she saw Mia and I having our own conversation, she would pretty much bully us. And she would have 2 of her other friends tag along and do it also, Brooklyn and Riley. So the one day we're walking to PE and Mia and I are having a conversation. And in our gym class, you had to line up in groups of 3. So it would go Mia, Becky, and then me. Well, because I wanted to finish my conversation with Mia, I decided to sit in Becky's spot. So we're sitting down and then Becky marches over to where we're sitting and just stands there and stares at us. Then she walks away and goes and sits with her other friends. And at the end of gym class, she comes back over to us. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why it's never good to be in a best friend group of 3. So like I said, Brittany hated it whenever Mia and I would have our own conversation. And I sat in Becky's spot in gym class, and then she got mad at us because I wanted to finish my conversation with Mia. So she goes over with her other friends that literally bully Mia and I. So at the end of gym class, she walks up to both of us with Brooklyn, and she literally is just standing there. And then Brooklyn goes, "Do you need me to do it for you?" Me and I look at each other like, what the fuck is going on? And then Brittany's like, "No, I just wanted to tell you guys that I don't want to be friends with you anymore." She was like, "You guys are just so fake. Like, you never include me in anything." Which was completely not true, but we were like, whatever. So then the next day at school, Brittany comes up to Mia and I, and she's like, "Hey guys." Like, this bitch was bipolar as fuck. And we're like, "We thought you didn't want to be friends with us anymore." And she was like, "No, I just meant I didn't want to be best friends." Story time about one of the most embarrassing things that has ever happened to me in high school. So a little background information. I was in my freshman year of high school. Well, spring break was coming up. Well, the whole year, my friend and I hadn't been to one single party. So we decided that we wanted to try and go to a party every single day of spring break, which was about to be super difficult because we had to worry about my strict-ass parents and my neighbors. A little background info on my neighbor. My neighbor is this girl who's in my same grade, and she literally hates my guts. I don't know why, but literally anything that I do, she'll go and she'll tell her mom, and then her mom will tell my mom, because my mom and her mom are best friends. But before we know it, Saturday comes around, and we go back to school on Monday. We did not make it to one single party. Well, later that night, we found out that one of our friends was throwing one. So around 11 o'clock, everybody's sleeping, and I walk out my back door, hop over my fence, and I start heading towards the road where my friend was going to be parked. You know, who do I see fucking sitting outside on their porch reading a fucking book? My fucking neighbor. Like for part 2. Part 2 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, the bitch that I hate is sitting out on her porch reading a fucking book at 11 o'clock at night. So I crouch down so she couldn't see me. I run to the car, and my friend and I finally go to the party. Well, we get to that party and it's really boring, so we decided to go to a different one. And the party that we were about to go through was being thrown by the kid that I really liked. So I start hanging out with him when we get there. I'm drinking a lot, having so much fun, and I really have to go to the bathroom. And I didn't know where anything was at all. So I grabbed my friend and we're looking around everywhere for the bathroom. Because when I asked him, he was super drunk and really couldn't explain to me where the bathroom was. So we were pretty much left to fend for ourselves. But we ended up not being able to find a bathroom, and this is where I had to improvise. So my friend and I go to the laundry room, and we see the litter box in there for the cat. Well, at this point, I was desperate, so I just went in the litter box. Well, 30 minutes later, the cops show up to the party. And everybody had to hurry up and leave because we did not want to get underages. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, I went in the litter box, and then the cops showed up. We all ran because we didn't want to get underages. I was able to sneak back into my house without anybody knowing. But when I get to school on Monday, everybody's talking about the party. And apparently the kid that I liked who threw the party, his parents didn't know that he threw one at all. And this was like during first period. So I went to text him and ask him if he was grounded because we were supposed to hang out the next day. And I realized that I am blocked. So I'm thinking, what the fuck? Why does he have me blocked? So I told my friend that he blocked me, and she goes, "It's probably because he saw what you did in the laundry room." And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no fucking way that he knows. Because there was a door that led to the outside in the laundry room, there were cameras in there. So everybody saw this video of me. People were posting it on their Finstas, posting it on their Snapchat stories. It was so fucking embarrassing. Not to mention the bitch that I hate who lives next door showed my parents the fucking video, and I was grounded for fucking 4 months. Story time, my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for 2 years, but we were on and off all the time. It was a super toxic relationship. Like, he would try to get with other girls and I would try to get with other guys to make him jealous, blah, blah, blah. Well, a week before Christmas, him and I broke up again. And I had my best friend sleep over that whole week because her parents were in Ireland. And my boyfriend lived right down the street from me. Like, it was probably a 2-minute walk to his house. Well, for the first 3 nights, my best friend would go on a jog every night, and she would be gone for like 2 hours. I would literally have to go unlock the door at 1 in the morning for her to get back in my house. Well, I think the 3rd night that she slept over, she came back in different clothes. And I realized that the sweatshirt she was wearing was my boyfriend's favorite sweatshirt. But I didn't really think anything of it because she never really showed interest in my boyfriend. But clearly I was oblivious. Anyways. So that same night, I wake up in the middle of the night and she's on the phone with someone. And it sounded exactly like my boyfriend. So I asked her who it was. But she couldn't give me an answer, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So she told me not to worry about it, and I was like, alright, whatever. So the next day, my boyfriend shows up at my house asking to get back together. Not a surprise, by the way. And of course I said, okay, we can be back together, blah, blah, blah. So that night while I'm in my room, my best friend's on the phone, and she has her AirPods in, so I couldn't hear who it was. And she was like, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And when I asked her where she was going, she wouldn't tell me. Well, she left her phone at my house. And because she usually tells me everything, I thought that something sus was going on. So I went through her phone. And I see that she's been texting this guy Jay a lot. And as I'm going through their conversation, there's one text that says, I don't care if she finds out. Just sneak over to my house while you're there. So I check the phone numbers and obviously it's my boyfriend. And her parents are really strict, like she was only supposed to be at my house that week, nowhere else. So I may have made up some stories that she had drugs in her bag and that she was forcing me to do drugs with her. So her parents came home early from their trip, they sent her to military school and I broke up with my boyfriend. Story time about the girl who was absolutely obsessed with me in high school. So it was my junior year in high school. And I'm just going to tell you guys the first story of how I knew that she was absolutely obsessed with me and wanted to be me. Well, I had been dating this guy for like a month. And I sent him nudes. Well, my nudes got spread around the school. And everybody knew they were mine until this one girl, and we're going to call her Addie, started saying that they were hers. I guess one of my friends was talking about it in class and they were like, OMG, did you hear that her nudes got leaked? AKA mine. And Addie was sitting at the same table and she said, no, those are my nudes. And at first I thought this girl was just trying to be nice. I was like, oh, well, that's nice of her, you know. Like, maybe she's just trying to say that so that way nobody will bully me, I guess. Well, the one day I texted her about it. And I was like, hey, like, you don't have to do that. It's fine. I'll take responsibility for it. I did it. And she was like, what are you talking about? Those are my nudes. Like for part 2. Part 2 about the girl who was obsessed with me. So like I said, she basically told me that those were her nudes. Even though I took the pictures and I knew they were mine. But I was like, okay, whatever, I'm not gonna argue with her. Well, then I get a text from my boyfriend. And he goes, what the fuck, you're so weird. Why would you send me somebody else's nudes? And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? And I tried to explain to him that I had no fucking clue why this girl was saying they were hers. But then he said that I was weird as fuck and he broke up with me. So like a week later, I see them walking around school together. And my friends tell me that they're now dating. And I really wasn't that mad about it. I was like, okay, maybe that's the only way that she could think of to get a boyfriend. Well, I forgot that my Instagram was logged in on his phone because he had super bad trust issues and wanted to make sure I wasn't cheating on him. So I text him and I'm like, hey, can you take my Instagram off your phone? And I saw that he read my text message, but I got no response. Well, a week later, you guys are never gonna guess what fucking happened, like for part 3. Part 3 about the girl who was obsessed with me. So like I said, I texted him and I got no response back. So I run into him the next day at school. And I'm like, hey, did you get my text? And he's like, text about what? And I was like, taking my Instagram off your phone? And he was like, oh yeah, Addie did it, don't worry. And I didn't think anything of it because, you know, I'm like, oh well, she's done torturing me. Well, I was very wrong. So in my first period, I went to go sit with my group of friends, because all 3 of us had that class together. And when I walk in, I realized that Addie is sitting in my seat. So I pull up a chair to the table, and they were all ignoring me and texting each other right next to me. So I was like, okay, what's wrong? And one of my friends goes, oh, nothing, just the fact that you DM'd Gigi and I's boyfriends, saying that we were whores and that they should date you. By the way, Gigi was my other friend. And after that, this bitch Addie has the nerve to make the comment, that's really fucked up. Why would you do that? So then I beat her ass and lost all my friends.
Tender touch, drum glove, staying up just talk to you. You stayed in touch, 2 continents, through all odds. Seems every night, yeah, all the time I'm calling out to you. Seems every time I take a drink, I'm reaching out.
One day in elementary school, it was lunchtime. A bitch had to go potty. It was poo-poo time. So I remember I went to the restroom and I was exploding or whatever. And these girls walked in. We're gonna call them the Chipettes, okay? This is the best part. So the Chipettes start yelling in the bathroom. Is someone here? Can someone hear me? Like, I didn't say anything. I was literally taking a shit. Like, what? These girls, deadass, start laughing. They turn off the lights in the bathroom. They turn on all the sinks, whatever. And they start saying like Bloody Mary or some shit. And then the Chipettes run out of the bathroom and shut the door. So here I am getting casted on. I remember seeing a shadow. I fell on my ass and I start screaming and crying. It wasn't good. So someone called the janitor. Janitor walks in to check up on me. It's a guy.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom 1 time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, I don't remember her name. Can I please use the restroom? And she was like, no, you can't because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester. Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, Mom, I'm sitting in class right now. My teacher won't let me use the restroom. And she was like, I'll take care of it for you. And I was like, okay. So like 5 minutes goes by and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing and she walks up to it and answers it and she's like, hello? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then she walks up to me like so angry and she like slams the pass on my desk and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do, thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Okay, so story time. So basically one time in 5th grade, my dad took me to get breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. We went there before school like always, and as we were there, this strange man outside was staring at me and like making faces. Super creepy. We didn't know him or anything, so we walked inside and I was kind of freaked out. I told my dad that I was creeped out by him and he told me that nothing bad was gonna happen. Or so he thought. So we got our foods and we ate it, everything was fine, chill. After we were done, we got up to leave. The man was gone by now, so I felt better But then on the way to my school, I saw him walking on the sidewalk. Like, I figured he was going to his house or, like, somewhere else. When we got to my school, no one was outside. It was kind of weird. We went to open the door because my dad was a part of the PTA, so he came in with me. The door, for some reason, was locked. My music teacher, out of nowhere, ran out and brought us inside quickly. She told us that our whole school was on code red. Scary. And that a man was in our school, so we went inside and I went and hid in the music room. Like for part 2.
Storytime. So once upon a time in grade 5, I was going through this really strange phenomenon where like 5 of my adult teeth decided to all come in at once. Now I already had this really weird obsession with when I had a loose tooth, I loved to like pluck it out of my face like berries off of a vine. So as you can imagine, sitting there with 5 loose teeth in my mouth felt like I was in an orchard on a hot summer's day. My brothers had just rewatched The Exorcist with me a few nights before while babysitting. So its cinematic masterpiece was so ever fresh in my mind as I sat there not listening to my teacher drone on about numbers, secretly popping my teeth out with my tongue and letting my mouth fill with blood. Till I noticed my dear old classmate Tristane, who used to eat rulers and pick on me, was staring at me. So I looked him dead in the eyes, opened my mouth slowly and let all of the teeth and blood just dribble out onto the desk. Then I said in a low grumble, "You will die tonight." He started screaming and then I had to go to church.
This is why you should never date multiple people at once. A story time, I guess. This story takes place when I was 17 or 16. Okay, no one cares. It was a long time ago. And girl, back in the day, I was getting played left, right, and center. Played like a game of football. I had a distinct taste for F-boys. And that was going on for some time until your girl said enough. Enough of this buffoonery. I'm not getting played by men any longer. And I'm going to become a player myself. I know the logic is really off, but I was 17, so cut me some slack, okay? So my brilliant idea was, I'm just gonna talk to multiple guys, and I will figure out which one I like in the end. And I'm gonna date that one. Now in my mind, the plan was flawless. And they do always say, don't put your eggs in one basket. So I end up meeting a couple of guys, and I really like this one guy, but I decide I'm keeping my options open. Already posted part 2, so go watch it.
I got pulled over today, and the cop comes to my window and goes, license, registration, and proof of insurance. And I look at him, I say, officer, I don't have my license on me, I don't have my registration, I don't have any proof of insurance. So then the cop looks at me and goes, then why the hell were you speeding? I caught you going 90 and 65.
And she canceled on me last minute, and she literally said, word for word, that she doesn't need her boyfriend being tempted to try to cheat on her on Valentine's Day. I didn't like that because she was implying that I would be the reason why he cheated. Anyways, a couple months later, I planned for us to do another double date for 4th of July. So we went to the beach, and of course, we wore bathing suits. I wore a 2-piece, and she wore a 1-piece with a skirt. When we get to the beach, I start to get undressed. She pulls me aside saying, why are you wearing that in front of my boyfriend? You look like a whore.
Am I the asshole for telling my wife to stop overreacting about me picking up my son from school? My son recently started 5th grade a few weeks ago. He's a great student, always on top of his homework and one of the brightest in his class. Piss was available for a video session. Am I the asshole for telling my wife to stop overreacting about me picking up my son early from school? My wife got home from work and I'd already texted her about the incident. We got into an argument because she said it was irresponsible to take him out of school for that reason and I'm affecting his education. She believes he should have stuck it out for the rest of the day and not used his friend's death as an excuse to miss class. He's been going to school every day for weeks without problems. That day in particular was just a bad day. I'd understand if it was a regular occurrence, but it was the first time. I don't see how missing less than half a day would affect him in the way my wife is saying it will. She brought it up again today and I got fed up. It was days ago, so I told her to stop overreacting already. Am I the asshole for dismissing her concerns? Am I the asshole for refusing to give up my dream wedding dress, though it means my fiance's family will not attend? I've never had a great relationship with my future mother-in-law. It hasn't been terrible, but I can sense that she doesn't like me. My fiance is very close to his family, so there's been some tension. I didn't invite mother-in-law dress shopping because our relationship is awkward, but I thought I'd show her a picture to make her feel included. My dress is a beautiful flowy beach dress, but not technically a wedding dress and could be ordered in color. I bought it from a small local boutique that we both love. Mother-in-law said that I can't wear the dress because she bought the same one for her 50th birthday, which is 2 weeks after my wedding. She does have the dress though in a mint green color. Am I the asshole for refusing to give up my dream wedding dress, though it means my fiance's family won't attend? Lavish birthday parties are a thing in our circle, so I know she's invested some serious time and money in this party. I said that I'm still gonna wear the dress because I didn't do it out of malice and I love it. Mother-in-law says that if she wears it after I do, everyone's gonna think she's pathetic and copying her son's wife. I said sorry, but not my problem. His entire side of the family and the friend's mother-in-law invited all backed out of the wedding. So like 15 people. His sisters have blocked him on everything and stepdad won't talk to him. He said he regrets raising him and he isn't a real man because he won't stand up for his mom. Bio dad called us to shame us the other night. Mother-in-law said if I don't do the right thing, no one coming to her party will come to our wedding. Am I the asshole for telling my mom no apology, no wedding invitation after seeing the wedding gift she gave my fiance? I, female 25, am getting married to my fiance Kevin next month. My family loves Kevin and Kevin loves them. However, my mom is the brutally honest type who constantly dishes out her opinions, usually negative, tasteless, and backhanded. She says she can't help it and that no one should be offended when she's just being honest. When she met Kevin, she kept making comments about him, his car, his degree, etc. With time and strict conversation, I was able to get her to show some respect. But she kept annoying Kevin by constantly talking about his hairless face. He comes from Irish origins, so he's white, he has no facial hair while I'm Hispanic. Am I the asshole for telling my mom no apology, no wedding invitation? Mom made jokes with her husband about how unmanly it is to not be able to grow a beard or a mustache. Those comments hurt Kevin so much and I had a very stern conversation with her. She said that she was just teasing him and that he shouldn't take it personal because that's just how she is. She ended up sincerely apologizing to Kevin and we left it at that. My mom decided to give Kevin a wedding gift and also to let him know how sorry she was for her past behavior. She invited the whole family for dinner and decided
He dated me because I was fat. I met this guy in high school, we'll call him Ted. Ted was a nice guy, he was class president, well known by people, you know, pretty popular. Girls crushed on him all the time and some confessed to him of all types. That's why I was a little confused when one day he asked me out on a date. I told him, "Are you joking?" And he was like, "No, I genuinely want to date you." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Because you're beautiful and I'm curious to how you are. I want to get to know you more." You know, charming things like that. So I believed him. We went out on a couple of dates and such. but some red flags that I noticed were a little weird. He would always ask me questions about my body, how my body was shaped a certain way, asked me if I worked out, what I ate daily, just things about my weight, and it was weird. So then I confronted him about it, and you will not believe what happened next. Why are you so defensive? I've never dated a fat person before, so I'm just curious. He said, are you serious? You said you wanted to get to know me and how I am. Yeah, that's why I'm asking certain things about you. I stood up, ran out of the restaurant, and never talked to him again. I missed school for 3 days. Lesson learned. I've been doing things with my mother's husband, and I don't know what to do. So my mom married this guy, let's call him John. They married when I was 10 years old. He made her happy, and he was the perfect match for her. But something about him just didn't sit right with me. I never liked him, and it was only 2 years since my mother had moved on from my original father. My father had died from cancer, so obviously that was hard for me. I didn't really get the chance to heal at 10 years old, especially since I didn't know how to process my emotion. I was so young. And prepare myself for my mom to move on and find someone new to marry. John always tried to bond with me. He tried to play catch with me, play dollhouse, read stories to me, even try to bake with me. He went to extraordinary lengths and I just wasn't having it. So one day, when I was 16, my mom called me at school. She told me that she was taking me on a shopping spree. I asked her, what's the limit? And she said $3K. I jumped for joy. She told me to take the bus to the mall and meet her in the food court. And so I did. I told her I loved her and that I'll be there soon. So I ended up arriving at the mall and went to the food court, but you will not believe who I saw there. I was so frustrated to find out it was John. I asked him, what are you doing here? He said, it's a way for us to spend time together and get to know each other since you haven't been trying for the past years. I was like, whatever, fine. We ended up going to his stores and actually having a lot of fun. My teacher sexually harassed me and I didn't know. Let's call this teacher Mr. Fitz. He taught history and history was my favorite class ever since I was younger. Mr. Fitz was a pretty good looking guy, I'm not gonna lie. But I didn't say anything because he was like in his 30s and we were all teenagers in high school. Freshmen to be exact. I was 14 around the time that this had happened. One day, Mr. Fitz handed me back a test paper, and I got a really good grade on it. The highest grade in the class, to be exact. He winked at me after handing me my paper, but I didn't pay any attention to it. I just thought he was being friendly. Then, the special treatment began, or known as, now that I know, grooming. It started with the snacks, and the constant higher scores than everybody else, pointing out that I was the best student in class, etc. A lot of praise as well. Other students were jealous, other students praised me. Some students even thought he liked me and I declined and felt it was inappropriate. But boy, were they right. Mr. Fitz asked me to stay after school. So Mr. Fitz had asked me to stay after school to discuss my grades and stuff. I was a little confused because he gave me good grades. Why would we need to discuss my grades? I had the highest grade in all of his classes. But I went anyways. I sat down on my usual seat and I asked him what the issue was. He said nothing. I just wanted to see how you were doing. I was like, oh, okay, but can we make it quick? I have to be home by a certain time. He said, yeah, that's fine, and he proceeded to sit next to me. We started talking about my other classes and how my grades were, which they were perfectly fine. It was just small talk. He told me how much of a good student I was and that I was his favorite, and he squeezed my shoulder. He gave me this weird look and it made me really uncomfortable. I brushed his hand off my shoulder and we continued to talk. You're a good kid. I just wanted to let you know that, he proceeded to say as he squeezed my leg. I got up and thanked him, and then I left the room. I went back home and I was really confused, but I just brushed it off. I went to school the next day and he asked me to stay after school again. I asked him if there's a problem because this is the second time that he's asked me to stay after school. He says no, but I have a question for you. I say, okay, what is it? I pull out my phone and record because I felt really uncomfortable and had a weird feeling about this. He basically asked me out to be his girlfriend. He said if I was his girlfriend, he would give me good grades and I wouldn't have to do schoolwork or tests or anything like that, and that I would also get paid. Don't you have a wife? I said. He said that doesn't matter and no one needs to know. I ran out of the classroom and panicked. I didn't really know what to do. I went to my guidance counselor and I showed her the recording. I told her the situation made me feel really uncomfortable. She told me that I was being groomed and that this is highly inappropriate for a teacher and this will immediately be resolved. I said okay and thank you. The next day I went to school, he was fired. We had a substitute for the time being, and she was really nice, and she didn't do anything appropriate to me this time. So lesson be learned, if you ever feel uncomfortable in a situation like this, especially when you're speaking to the higher-ups, always record the situations and report it. I put my period blood in her drink for revenge. So I used to be friends with this girl, let's call her Mackenzie. I've been friends with her my whole life and we got along pretty well. One time we were joking around how we usually do and she called my mom the N-word with the hard R. I told her not to joke like that and that I didn't appreciate it. She said she didn't care and proceeded to do it anyways. I felt like slapping the crap out of her. But I ended up going home. She ended up texting me saying she was sorry, begging for my forgiveness, and I forgave, thinking people could change. So we hung out at the mall and this boy came up to me with his group of friends and asked me if he could chill with us because he thought it was cute. I agreed. Everything was fine, we were having a good time, but Mackenzie was one of those girls who typically switched up whenever boys were around because she's boy crazy and always wants to make herself look better. She brought up embarrassing moments from when I was young, such as I used to pee on my bed, and that I shaved my eyebrows off. She always did this in front of boys trying to make herself look better. I relaxed before I got hyped and just let her. One of the guys said that wasn't cool and I should stick up for myself, but I told him I'm acting calm because I have the best revenge in mind. So then after that, we said our goodbyes and went to my house. We had a good time, but then she was hungry and asked for cherry Kool-Aid. So I made some nachos with ground beef, cheese, and salsa, and made a whole pitcher of Kool-Aid. I brought it to my room since I have a table in my room. I set the food down and she didn't even say thank you, might I add. She also said the cheese was cheap tasting while looking me up and down. I said I was going to the bathroom real quick since I needed to take out my tampon and put on a pad. So she asked me if on the way I could grab her some more Kool-Aid. I gave her a dirty look and took the cup. She usually drinks all of my Kool-Aid in one day because she's impulsive with consuming food and beverages. She's selfish, to put it short. I brought her cup to the laundry room because it was across the downstairs bathroom and I had to pee badly. Then I got the crazy idea for karma. At first, I was going to sprinkle laxatives into her food, but this one was better and more evil. I went into the guest bathroom, took my tampon out, and swirled it in her cup for a bit. I squeezed it too. Then I put a fresh pad on, poured in the Kool-Aid, and added a tad more sugar in case it was salty and went back to the room. "Here you go, enjoy," I said as she laughed and drank it. I stared at her the whole time and smiled. After that, she went home and I blocked her on everything. I'm definitely never going to tolerate a racist disrespecting me and my mother. Hopefully she sees this story someday and learns her lesson.
Ever wonder what would happen if you stopped sleeping? During World War II, the Russians wanted to find a way to keep their soldiers awake longer, so they came up with this awful experiment where they took prisoners of war, put them in a gas chamber, and then exposed them to experimental drugs to see how long they could keep them awake for. Initially, the drugs seemed great. The first 4 days, the subjects were agitated, but were normal. By day 5, they stopped interacting with each other and began acting extremely paranoid. On day 9, one of the subjects screamed for so long that he tore his vocal cord. On day 14, they started eating themselves. When they turned off the gas on day 15, all of the subjects began screaming in pain, begging for them to turn the gas back on. When they didn't, they all fell asleep and died.
This is why you should never Google yourself. Some of us might have done it once or twice, but for Anora Petrova, one simple search led to horrifying consequences. Anora had always wanted to be an ice skater. She was young, talented, successful, and had a famous trainer. The night before her first big championship win, she felt more anxious than usual. For fun, she Googled herself and came across a Wikipedia page saying that she would win. When she did win, Anora thought this must be a coincidence. But every time after that, the page would predict whether she won or lost. She checked it every single time, almost addicted to refreshing that site. When she was about to compete in another huge competition, she decided to manipulate the website by changing the outcome it predicted. But instead, it said Anora Petrova is going to get what she deserves. Right after, she was accused of sabotaging another girl's skates, which ended up slicing her in the forehead. Even though Anora denied it, she was banned from the competition and was dropped by her trainer. She thought this must be the worst of it until she checked the website the next day and saw a terrifying message about her. Follow for part 2 of the story.